It's that time again where I cover my best games of the year, and 2019 has been kinda mixed. There's been a lot of really good games, but it hasn't been that one game in particular that stood out amongst the rest and blown me away like last year's God of War, which made picking my game of the year quite difficult. Before I do jump in, while I'm going to remain as objective as possible, these are my top 10 games, and therefore is my personal opinion, so don't be offended if your favourite doesn't show up. With that said, let's get into it. To kick us off at number 10 is a title that came out of absolutely nowhere, Apex Legends. Apex Legends is a battle royale game set in the Titanfall universe by Respawn, and in terms of its core gameplay, is incredibly fast paced with an Overwatch hero mechanic that works really well. While it's not my number one game of this year, it is no doubt my most played by far. I've easily put 200 hours into it at this point, and I rarely find myself getting bored of it. Respawn haven't handled everything great with the game. Season 1 was pretty lackluster, but 2 and 3 have been notably better, and even though there are server issues and some bugs that still need ironing out, I have to applaud the team for how solid its gameplay is overall. Coming in at number 9 is Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3 doesn't attempt to do anything new. Gearbox played it pretty safe in fact, only really refining its mechanics and adding small quality of life features. That said, what made the series so good all those years ago still stands true today, and therefore Borderlands 3 is a great experience that was worth the wait in my opinion. Even though the new villains don't quite compare to Handsome Jack, the new playable characters are filled with personality, and exploring the different planets is a lot of fun. A little more originality for the third entry would have bumped out further on this list, but it's hard to complain about more of the same when its gameplay still holds up so well. Number 8 is the newest game by Remedy, Control. Prior to Control's release, I was a little concerned it may not live up to its potential. After all, their last game, Quantum Break, was okay but nothing special, and therefore sold pretty poorly. It's clear they've learned from Quantum Break though, as despite being similar in some regards, it's considerably better, featuring a unique, interesting setting of the oldest house that morphs and changes over time, as well as some great supernatural powers that are really satisfying to use. Control's only real issues are its shaky performance and its ending, which I find to be a letdown considering how intriguing the story and lore was leading up to it. And number 7 is Days Gone. Days Gone wasn't rated that highly by critics, with a Metascore of only 71, but I and many others think it was criminally underrated. Admittedly, it takes a little while to get going, and at least at launch it has some performance issues, but get past those and Days Gone is another fantastic PS4 exclusive with a great story, world and survival elements that keep you on your toes as you fight against zombie-like creatures called Freakers. Thankfully, despite lower than expected review scores, the game sold incredibly well, and a sequel was teased at the end, so I'm really looking forward to what comes next from the series. And number 6 is a game that had a somewhat opposite situation to Days Gone. Critically it scored pretty well, but had gamers split down the middle. Many felt it was another genius creation from Kojima, others felt it was a boring slog. I don't feel like Death Stranding is a work of genius, but I do think it is very good, certainly a lot better than I expected, considering it is essentially about delivering packages. While the story is convoluted, it actually pieces together quite well in the end, and it introduces new gameplay elements often, allowing you to approach deliveries in new ways, keeping things interesting. My only gripe is that it's a little too long, and the boss battles are rather generic and repetitive, but that aside, Kojima has delivered yet another enjoyable, quirky title. Moving on to number 5, and we have The Outer Worlds. It's no secret that the Fallout franchise has fallen from grace in recent years, with Fallout 4 not quite meeting expectations, and Fallout 76 receiving huge backlash. In light of that, people have been chomping at the bit to get another true Fallout experience akin to that of 3 and New Vegas, and The Outer Worlds gives us just that. Created by Obsidian, who also worked on New Vegas, we essentially get a Fallout game in space, and it delivers on more or less every front, except maybe length, coming in a fair bit shorter than you would expect from a game like this. That aside, however, it's a perfect substitute and shows Bethesda how it should be done. Number 4 goes to Devil May Cry 5. Devil May Cry 5 returns to its original timeline after a failed attempt at a reboot in 2013, and it's certainly a triumphant return, providing what I think is the best entry in the series to date, hands down. This time you have 3 characters to play as: Dante, Nero, and brand new character V, and they all play very differently, with plenty of ways to make use of their individual abilities. Even after the credits rolled, I was diving right back in on the harder difficulties, which is something I don't do very often on a lot of games, but I find it really fun and addictive to push myself to achieve those elusive high ranks. Taking spot number 3 is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. As unbelievable as it is, EA have finally published not just a good Star Wars game, but a great one, and that's thanks to the developer Respawn, and also in part because EA decided not to ram microtransactions down our throats for once. Fallen Order doesn't do anything particularly original, in fact it shamelessly takes elements from many other titles like Uncharted and Dark Souls, but they are executed surprisingly well and combined together nicely. Using your lightsaber and force powers, while a little repetitive towards the end, is incredibly well handled and satisfying, and I love the Metroidvania aspect of the worlds where you revisit them once you've unlocked new abilities to further explore them. Some people have noted the game can be a little buggy, but this isn't something I personally experienced. Just one spot off of Game of the Year at number 2 is Resident Evil 2. Even though it is a remake, originally released in 1998 on the PS1, it does a fantastic job of highlighting just how good the original is, and also changes many of its elements to fit in with the expectations of gaming today, such as doing away with the archaic tank controls and locked camera angles. The new graphics also add to the tension and horror aspect, especially on the occasions you're being chased by the tyrant, which is utterly terrifying and pure panic inducing. I could spend a long time going over all the improvements made, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to say this is a brilliant remake that sets a benchmark for what we should expect from them. That of course leads me to my Game of the Year for 2019, and that is none other than Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Sekiro is a new project from From Software, the devs responsible for Dark Souls and Bloodborne, with Sekiro playing similar to them, but with twists that make it feel very much like its own experience. In Dark Souls you rely a lot on dodging attacks, that doesn't work at all in Sekiro. Instead you have to play far more aggressively, parrying blows at the right time to deplete an enemy's posture and deliver a finishing blow. You also can't rely on other players, which is something I shamefully did a lot on bosses in previous FromSoft games, ultimately forcing me to master its combat system, which was incredibly rewarding when I did, as beating the game is no easy task. It's brutally difficult, but never unfair. Featuring my favourite setting and story from Software, I think this is their best and most polished game to date, shining above the rest of the games this year. So that wraps up my top 10 games of the year, but I also have a few honourable mentions that just narrowly miss the list. These are Life is Strange 2, Astral Chain, and Fire Emblem 3 Houses. That's it for today. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for a notification each time a video goes live. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.